Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Monday, December 20th Cranston City Council meeting to order. Mr. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilwoman Marino.
Present.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Present.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Present.
Councilwoman Jermaine.
Present.
Councilman Donegan. Councilman Campopiano.
Present.
Councilman Riley. Council Vice President Ferry.
Present.
Council President Paplaskas.
Present. Before we get going this evening, just wanted to talk a minute with everyone here in chambers and at home. The COVID-19 pandemic has obviously been very tough on a lot of Cranstonians and Rhode Islanders. Before we start the meeting, we are going to do a moment of silence in memory of those lost. But I just wanted to take a minute to, in particular, to acknowledge Michael Zanni and the Zanni family. On behalf of the entire city council, send thoughts and prayers and our deepest condolences to the Zanni family and to Rosalba. I'd also like to send our condolences on behalf of the entire city council to the Perillo family, Dan Perillo, on the passing of Dan Perillo Sr., and also to the entire Cranston School Department family and the McGonigal family on the passing of Mrs. McGonigal. Our thoughts are with you all during this time, and our thoughts and prayers are with all of you. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence, please, in honor of those lost and in their memory. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Also like to note for the record, I spoke with Councilman Riley earlier today. He does have an excused absence. He's caring for a loved one with COVID. So best wishes, Councilman Riley, and be well. Moving on, we have the minutes of the last meeting. I want to entertain a motion to continue the reading of these minutes to the next meeting.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino.
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli.
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine.
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan. Councilmember Campopiano.
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry.
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes,
The votes are 8 in the affirmative.
thank you. We have no public acknowledgements and commendations. Under public hearings and public comment, we have listed here the audit report from Markham LLP. We'll do the audit report first, and then we'll go to public comment in general. If Director Strom, I will turn this portion of the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Council President. This evening, we have before the council and general population a presentation of the audit that's we're working on and almost has been completed. It's in a draft format and it's going before review at this point. But this is basically the final of the audit that's before you. You have hard copies at your desks. And it's also, I believe, on the screen that's going to be available. And I just pleased to have here Erica Olabry and Jim Wilkinson, the auditors for Markham. This is their first year doing this 3-year contract with the city, and they have done audits before in the past, but this is the new cycle that they're doing for the next 3 years, and this is fiscal year 2021. So with that, I'll turn it over to Erica, and she can go over the different pages. If you have questions, feel free, you'll be able to ask them at the end of the presentation.
Can I take the mask on or should I leave it on? Can
Just
I
need-
take the mask? Oh, is it not on? The green light's on. Okay, perfect. Can you guys hear me? Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm Erica Lobry. I'm a partner at Markham, and Jim Wilkinson is the authorized partner signing the report for Cranston. So I'm going to take you through the slide deck. So basically, it's going to go through the city and the school's financial statement audit and the financial statement results. Right now, we're in the final review stages of the 2021 report. So it's in our quality review. It's been through partner review. Management has their draft. They're going through it, and we're also addressing any GFOA comments there were last year. We are also targeting December 31st for the issuance date to comply with the GFOA and the state requirements. There's also a separate audit report that you guys have for compliance testing with federal money. That is, we have the preliminary information, so we'll be working on that, and that would be a separate report that's issued right after that work is completed. So on the next slide, we're going to go over the city general fund performance. So again, operationally, the city increased their fund balance by $674,000. Overall, as a snapshot at a point in time at 6/30/2021, there's about $9 million in fund balance. So if you want to look, the school general fund is increasing their general fund about 2.3 million. So again, the school general fund sits as a special revenue fund of the city. So any leftover remaining fund balance is considered restricted for education. So you'll see that in the restricted category. Their total fund balance is about 7.8 million. On the next slide, this is basically your balance sheet. So this includes the general fund of the city, the school unrestricted general fund, and then the other governmentals column is a number of different funds in the back of your financial statement, which could include federal grants, state grants, your bond funds. So there's a number of funds that roll up into that category. So again, your cash this year, a little bit more significant in the prior years. You do have some recovery funds sitting in there. Before year end, you got about 13 million in that. So that's in that general fund cash of 41 million. So again, that also sits as a liability as considered unearned revenue because that has not been spent as of 6/30. You also had some advanced tax collections for the next tax year that came in before 6/30. So that's also sitting on your balance sheet as a $12.9 million liability to be applied in the next year. And you can see your fund balance, your categories below. So the city total is about 14.4 million. The school is about 7.8 million. And then your other governmental is about 5.3 million. In total, the city has fund balance of about 27.5 million. Again, a lot of them have different categories. So some could be restricted for particular purposes. Some could be non-spendable for a different purpose. And that's all disclosed in your notes as well. The next slide really just goes over the fund balance for the city and the school over the last 5 years. So you'll notice the fund balance has come down a little bit this year. There was an entry that had to be made based on GASB 33 and the way the pilot's been recognized in the past. So that entry affected fund balance as well. Also, the actual operational increase was 674,000. So that was applied to fund balance as well. On the next slide, it's basically your income statement. So this is your statement of revenues, all your expenditures, and your changes in fund balance. And it goes into the categories of the general fund for the city, the school department general fund, and again, the other governmental funds, which includes a number of different funds that the city holds. So again, your city general fund is running a surplus of about 674,000 this year. So operationally, they did well. The school as well was a surplus of 2.3 million. You'll notice on other governmental funds, you'll see that going the opposite way, and it looks to be a decrease in your fund balance. Again, that's usually related to timing. The most significant expenditures in those funds were related to your bond funds. So there was a bond issue after year end, and that'll be recouped in fiscal 22. So the next slide is really budgetary, where the city performed. So budgetary total revenues were above budget about 1.8 million. Property taxes came in about 1.2 million above what was anticipated. Your permits and license came in about 665,000 over what was anticipated. And your intergovernmental revenue, so like any grants or anything, that came in 2.2 million above what was anticipated. Some of that was increased funds requested from FEMA. So you'll notice when we go over the expenses, some of the overtime and fire was above the budget, but again, the revenue is being recorded as well. So actual results for other revenue groups, all down based on budgets. Fines were down. Department revenues were below budget about 936,000. Investment income was below budget about 443,000. And then the other category, which includes a number of items, was below 409,000. So going into the expenditures for the city. So they were $1 million above appropriated amounts in the total. So the largest departments that were isolated were fire and law. There were some claims paid out. Again, the fire overtime, a lot of public safety items that had to be dealt with. So again, those items that went over or under, we don't see any reason to think there was a structural deficiency in the budgeting process or any weakness in the budgetary controls. I think it's just a matter of timing and the events that took place. So the next slide actually shows you the city budget. So that'll show you all the different categories we just discussed. And then on a budgetary basis, it was pretty much an increase of 640,000. So very similar to the gap. So the difference when we talk about the fund statements that we presented before, under accounting principles, you're required to fold in certain funds of the city. So that's what basically the difference is. There's certain funds that don't meet the definition of a standalone fund, so they roll into the general fund. But on a budgetary basis, it was about a $640,000 surplus. And then on the school department, so revenues were above budget by about 78,000. It was really due to the federal funding and then more tuition revenues that came in this year. And the expenditures were below the appropriated amounts by about 2.8 million. And then the next slide will show you the budget to actual for the school in more detail. So again, overall $1.6 million on a budgetary basis for the school as a surplus. So that covers all of the governmental funds. The next area I was going to go into is on your business type activities. So all the funds that basically sit there and run basically as a business. So your sewer fund is, full accrual accounting. It had a positive net position of $70 million, increase from last year of 1.5 million. So it did very well. Your school lunch, charter school, and ice rink are all non-major funds based on the definition of the accounting principles. They all had positive increases from 20 to 21. Again, the charter school, and if you'd compare it to any other charter school out there, the difference with your charter school is it has to report under governmental standards, which requires you to comply with the pension OPEB standards. So that requires you to book significant liabilities for the employees that are employed by this charter school. So that, with an ending deficit of 683,000, is really related to all the liabilities that get booked for the OPEB and the pension. Operationally, it did very well. Enterprise funds, they all generated net positive cash flow. So they were all doing operationally very well. So I'm just going to go into a little bit of information on the pension over for the city and the school. So this one here is on your city, police, and fire pension. So if you'll notice the trend, it's going in the right direction. So from 17 to 21, your funding has gone up. So that's good. You want to keep funding it and staying in line with the annual required contribution so that the liability comes down. The next slide here is basically talking about the same plan. So as of your year end, it's about $217 million for a net pension liability. So again, that takes into account the investments you hold. So that's the net amount owed. On the other plan that we want to go over is the other post-employment benefit plan. So this is the OPEB plan. So police and fire, which the city has their own plan, has a net OPEB liability of $39 million. So as of 6/30/21, it's 17.85% funded, and compared to last year, it was about 19.42. There was a decrease in the contribution made this year, so that affected the funding ratio. On the school, the net OPEB liability is about 14.6 million. The funded ratio is about 11.35 compared to the 4.6 in the prior year. So that's a good thing. You guys want to keep going in the way where your funded ratio obviously goes up. So the next slide talks about a report that's included in your final financial statements. You're probably familiar with it. It's been around for quite a few years. So that's the state municipal transparency report. It's basically all your financial data in a format that the state wants to see it in. So that's also put into there with notes to that schedule. And it's reconciled to the financial statements at the school and the city level, and also reconciled to their chart of account report too. And that's basically all the financial information. I was just going to go over, basically the audit went very smoothly. We've had a number of communications with management. Obviously, it takes a while to get to this point. It takes a lot of heavy lifting from your team and our team. So there was a lot of great communication throughout the audit. A lot of things we had to deal with and come to a conclusion on. We will issue a final communication letter once the audit is final. So you'll get that copy. And then we also have to finish the single audit report, which is the compliance report. And once that's done, we can issue any comments at that time.
Does that conclude your report?
That does. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions for Markham or Director Strom? From council members? Council Member Marino.
Thank you. Director Strom, I just had a respect to the funding of the pension. Is there a particular reason why it was funded in a decreased amount this past fiscal year?
when we budgeted for 21's budget, we reduced the OPEB contribution, and I'm rounding it off, I don't have the budget in front of me, from $4 to $2 million. But as far as the pension, we contributed at 100% of the ARC. We did not reduce the ARC at all. That's why if you look at that page, it shows that the liability and the funding ratio is increased every year from 21.19 up to 27.25. So we're making strides in the pension. As far as OPEB, that was what we did in 21, but in 22, this past budget, we're back to 100% contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions? Councilmember Renzulli.
Thank you. Director Strom, just to clarify, the $640,000 surplus, that goes into the rainy day fund, correct? Yes, and for the schools, they have their own rainy day fund?
Well, they don't really call it a rainy day or unassigned fund. It's a restricted fund because it only can be used for school activity or.
So kind of like their own rainy day fund?
Yes, I mean, you
Okay.
could call it that, yeah.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Jermaine.
Thank you, Council President. It's in page 8. In the first line says that total review were above budget by $1.8 million. And then at the end, it says actual result for the review groups all down based on budget for FY 21. And under it's enumerate fines below budget, department below budget, investment income below budget, other below budget. I'm a little bit confused about those.
Yeah, those are the.
What
those-
it mean, like in the same page, we have above budget, and then after I have below budget. How we can reconcile those information here?
Even though we had some line items that were below budget, we had others that were significantly above budget to offset those below budget. But keep in mind, due to COVID, we had loss of certain revenues, like municipal court was down. Investment income was down because of the rate of return. Certain departments were down. So when we did the budget for this year, as you know, we included revenue loss in the ARPA funds. And that's where the shortfall of these would be picked up in budget year 22. So, once the council sees, there's a formula that we're working on right now, and I will present it. I think I had a brief discussion with Councilman Ferry that I will show you how we calculated through FY 20. And then once 21 concludes as of December 31st, it's not based on fiscal year, it's based on calendar year. We'll show you what that number is. And I think it'll be even more than the 7.8 million that we had aside for loss of revenues.
Thank you. I need a more clear. Is it possible we could have, for example, for those where we are below budget, we have the total for those in separate sheet, and then we can compare with where we have the above budget?
Well, I believe in the audit, it'll show that. Am I right, Erica, that those revenues that are below budget?
Yeah, the detail shows in the audit.
I mean, this is just an audit presentation. This is not the
So if you
audit.
look at, I think the next page, you'll see all the detail of how it shows on the schedule. There's a schedule that says city budgetary amounts. That'll show you all the categories and how they performed against budget.
I think, though, Erica, not to interrupt you, but I think what Councilwoman Jermaine would like is maybe on the city side, which I have in my weekly reports, a little more detail of what that department is. Like, for instance, it says here, departments and it's
Yeah.
below budget. Well, what departments are there? I can
You
provide
can
that.
provide that,
Yes.
yeah. So it's a roll up when you go to the
Thank you.
statements, yes.
Okay. I can do that.
Thank you.
All right. I do, Erica, why don't you mention too, though, that we had to make an adjustment this year due to the, based on GASB 33 and the Auditor General on the pilot program. I mean.
Yeah, and I think
I'd
everybody
like
got a
them to
community.
understand that a little bit.
Okay, so I think everybody got a communication on the council relating to the adjustment we were discussing based on an auditor general communication relating to the pilot revenue that's always historically been accrued back to the fiscal year. It's usually paid in July. Based on GASB 33, you have to recognize that in the fiscal year in which it's appropriated by the state. So the amount in July is really a fiscal 22 appropriation. So that entry was made in the financial statement numbers you see. So that was something that was made based on a restatement of fund balance. So it was an opening fund balance adjustment as well as a current year adjustment for the amount that was accrued in the current year.
And we were, just to elaborate, we were one of few communities that would accrue it. We would receive it, say, in July and August. We would set up a receivable at the end of June for that pilot money. And then when the money came in, we would apply it to that fiscal year of the prior fiscal year. That's been that way for, I'm going to say 25 years.
Yeah,
This year, all of a sudden, it's been a change. And so it's had what I call a negative impact to our unassigned fund balance, because now it's being shown when you receive it in that fiscal year. So for instance, we got it in July of 21, it'll be in this fiscal year that we're currently in, not last year. So that's,
it's definitely a change in how it has been historically been reported. All of the communities were addressed by the Auditor General and all took that into account, and a lot of the auditors had to make that adjustment this
Right.
year. So all of the communities are now reporting that in accordance with the standard.
and going back, this goes back about 25 years now, that the former, I believe his name was Picciarelli, who was the Auditor General at the time. He asked the cities at that time, or municipalities, to do it the way we've been doing it right along, because it actually at that point helped the state. So that was the reason for doing it. And we just kept that methodology going forward. This year, now we had to change it. And so I wasn't happy about it, to be very honest with you, for the city. And I think it affected also Providence and somewhere else, Erica. It was.
Yeah, it was basically all the communities that he addressed.
Yeah.
Some have a smaller pilot than others.
Right.
You guys have one of the larger ones.
Mm.
So it was definitely an impact that had to be considered.
Yeah, that was $4.7 million, which is a lot of money.
Thank you, Director. As you mentioned, I would love to see that really in detail, help us for the next budget coming in. We know how to really look at things, because when we see, for example, fine below budget $565,000, and you have department $936,000.
Yeah, and I think just to keep in mind that it was COVID and there was a lot of things going on. So I think a lot of the communities are going to see a drop in those types of fees for this year, and hoping that they do get recouped in the next year.
And also, when we did the 22 budget that we're currently in now, we did adjust for the loss of revenues this year. So because we didn't know that it was going to have such a major impact in fiscal year 21, because the pandemic just started at the end of 20, so, and carried forward into 21. So, but we should be fine. Right now, I can tell the council that our revenues are progressing very well in the year that we're in right now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, council member. Thank you. Any other questions or comments Councilmember Renzulli? I think you're the only one with the hand up. The floor is yours.
I don't know who to direct this question to, the auditor or Director Strom, but I just want to be my understanding for the city's surplus. Is it fair to say that that was mainly from an increase in revenues that were above the budget, whereas the schools revenue was very high above the budget? It was due to more their expenditures that were appropriated. They spent less. Is that correct? Okay,
Correct.
because I just
You're-
want to make sure, because the schools are always asking us for more money and they're not spending the money they're getting. So I'm just want to put that out there. But I will say that I just wanted to commend the administration and the finance team for showing a surplus during the middle of COVID. I hope that that will continue, and I hope that our fines will come back into play as well. But I just think that that's great to see right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions or comments for Director Strom or Markham? There being none, just want to thank you both for being here.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
very much.
And when will that final audit come out? You might have said it.
Drafts are with management and they're in final QC. Our anticipation is obviously prior to 12/31, but 12/31 is the drop dead date.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on, we have public hearings and public comment on docketed items. I do think 2 items on the agenda might be getting continued this evening or requests to be continued. I'm going to defer to our legal counsel. This is in reference to, I'll let him explain it.
Thank you, Mr. President. So 2 items that were reported out of the ordinance committee relative to the trolley barn. The ordinance itself, the title of the ordinance, the form, the format, it just hasn't been edited coming out of committee. And there are edits, not substantive edits, but edits that matter to Muni code when it gets transferred from the clerk's office to Muni code, should it be passed. In addition to that, and I conferred with the solicitor on this, we would like to check the references to the comprehensive plan that have been made here, just to ensure that they're correct. We want to make sure that what you're voting on is appropriate in terms of its congruency with what is in the comprehensive plan. But certainly the caption and there are no proper references to the code in this ordinance, and that needs to be corrected before it's put on the floor for you to vote on. So my recommendation with that is to get it back to you in 30 days with those changes. They're not substantive changes, but they are changes that could lead to confusion if a floor amendment is done. I don't need to remind everybody here, we're down a city clerk and we're down the deputy as a result of a death in the family, and we're down some other bodies downstairs. So to say that we're working with a skeleton crew is an understatement. So I'd ask you to be patient, and we'll be back to you in 30 days on that. I have spoken to the applicant's attorney and certainly spoken to the solicitor's office about it, and they're in agreement. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Angel. Does that have to be of a form or motion at all to be
No, it
continued?
doesn't.
Or is that
Nope,
perfectly
you just,
moved? Okay.
what you would do is make a motion to carry both of those to the regular docket in January.
Yeah, and there, just to clarify, the reason I asked Attorney Angel to bring this up now is I know there's some members of the public that are on Zoom and possibly here in chambers to speak on the trolley barn development. We will be continuing this to next month, so I would ask that if you can hold your comments until next month, when we'll be making a vote or making a decision on that. We will be continuing it this evening. Councilmember Renzulli.
Thank you, Council President. I would just also like to note that I noticed the Planning Commission recommendation has not been updated from prior to their December 7th meeting, linked on the agenda. So if we could get the proper one at the next meeting, that would be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. So that being said, I will open up. All right, that being said, I will open up public hearings and public comment. If you do have a comment on the trolley bond, I'd ask if you don't mind to please hold that until next month's meeting. So if there's anybody here in chambers that would like to speak on any docketed matters, now would be the time. So no one, if there's somebody on Zoom that would like to speak on docketed matters, please raise your hand.
See no public comment.
I will close public comment on docketed matters. Let's take a motion to take the docket out of order. We'll continue those two items right now.
Second.
We have a motion to take the docket out of order. Is that correct? We have a second. Any discussion? There being none, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino,
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan, Councilmember Campopiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes. Now, I'll entertain a motion to continue 9-21-01, ordinance amendment of 2010 comprehensive plan, Trolley Bond Associates LLC.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to continue and a second. Any discussion? There being none, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino,
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan, Councilmember Campopiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes,
The votes are 8 in the affirmative.
I'll entertain a motion to continue 9-21-02, ordinance amendment of chapter 17, Code of City of Cranston, entitled zoning, filed by Trolley Barn Associates LLC.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino,
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan, Councilmember Campopiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
The
and
votes
just-
are 8 in the affirmative.
Thank you. Just for clarification, the next city council meeting is currently scheduled for January 24th. Okay. Moving on to resolutions, we have none. Going on to report of committees, we have the Finance Committee. Council Vice President Ferry for the introduction of the items. Report of committees, Finance Committee.
Okay. Page 2.
First one should be the real estate tax abatements.
Okay, we have a resolution authorizing real estate tax abatements.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the real estate tax abatements. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino,
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas, Councilmember Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan, Councilmember Campopiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes,
The votes are 8 in the affirmative.
Next, we have a resolution authorizing motor vehicle tax abatements. We have a motion to approve.
thank you. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino,
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan, Councilmember Campopiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes,
The votes are 8 in the affirmative.
Yep. Sorry. Next, we have a resolution authorizing tangible tax abatements. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino,
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan, Councilmember Campopiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
Votes are 8 in the affirmative.
Next, we have tax interest waiver approvals. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino,
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan, Councilmember Campopiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
Votes are 8 in the affirmative.
Last, we have tax interest waiver denials. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino,
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine, Councilmember Donegan, Councilmember Campopiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes,
The votes are 8 in the affirmative.
thank you. That concludes the report of committees. Moving on to public comment for undocketed items. Is there anybody here from the public to speak on any undocketed matters? If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. Sure. Good evening. Come on up. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening.
And just make sure the green light is on. Thank you.
Good evening. We are the Masons, Danielle and George from 8 Eden Park Drive in Cranston. We come to you as we presented some materials, some maps, some photos, some videos, and a petition from the residents on 8 Eden Park Drive due to the traffic issue that we're having from Eden Elementary.
Okay. Do you have all that information with you now that we can take?
I have a map that was given to me on August 21st, 2020 from Jason, what does that say? And Decosia. And then he asked me to draw a map, and then we have photos of the parents parking. And then we have the petition from the neighbors.
Okay, I have a representative from the administration, Stephen Piver, that's going to take that information from you. Can you give your name, Steve? Can you get their contact information too, please? Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes, I did present an ordinance about this issue they are talking about, and I have some also information I will share with you.
So we can't have too much discussion on this because it's not on the docket, but it's okay for you to tell us what the issue is. We can't get into a question and answer, but Stephen's happy to work with you and help you on that. And if it's an ordinance that's coming up, is that what it is? So it'll be heard in the committee next month.
Okay.
So,
Just to make a long story short,
Make-
we've been there for going on 18 years. We've been there going on 18 years, and it's a consistent, everyday problem with the blocking of driveways, parking in our driveways, parking on our property, and constant arguments where we can't get in our driveways and they won't move.
thank you. So this is actually being introduced as new business this evening and will be heard in the ordinance committee on January 13th. If you can log on either on Zoom or come back to City Hall, that would be great, because that's when we'll have, as council members, that's when we'll have all the information and it will be in front of us.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Any public comment on Zoom? You can raise your hand.
See no public comment.
One last call for chambers. There being none, I will close public comment on undocketed matters. With the election and or appointment of city officials, City Planning Commission, the appointment of Stephen Frias to fill the unexpired term of Robert DiStefano for a term to expire December 17th, 2022. This is a council president appointment. No vote to be taken. Moving on to executive communications, Director Moretti.
Good evening. This administration is requesting that the Deputy Chief Lawrence Karen be placed on pension. He served the city honorably for many years. He deserves the pension. There's no reason from the administration's end to deny that.
Thank you, Director. Could I have a motion to place Deputy Chief Lawrence Karen Jr. on pension?
Motion to place Deputy Chief Lawrence Karen on pension.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, I'll just wish Deputy Chief a wonderful retirement and thank him on behalf of the entire council for all of your service to the city. Much appreciated, sir. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino,
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan, Councilmember Campopiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes,
The votes are 8 in the affirmative.
thank you. Director Moretti, I think you have one more item.
Yes, please. The administration is requesting advice and consent of Carl Santucci on the Conservation Committee, of reappointment to the Conservation. He's been serving that committee well. He's active and I think familiar to most everyone.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the advice and consent and reappointment of Carl A. Santucci as a member of the Conservation Commission.
Motion to approve.
Any discussion? There being none, I'll just say briefly, on behalf of the entire council, thank Mr. Santucci for continuing his service to the city. He serves both on the Conservation Commission and on the Patuxent River Authority. I know many of you have met him through the years, through the various cleanups that he helps host and shows up at, and we certainly appreciate his hard work for the city and the entire Patuxent River watershed. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino,
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan, Councilmember Campopiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes.
The votes are 8 in the affirmative.
Congratulations, Mr. Santucci. Moving on to Council President Communications. I promise I'll be very brief this evening. First, I just wanted to give a brief update, and very brief because it's not listed here, the opera meetings. I'm hoping to have the first opera workshop here in Chambers on January 27th. We'll also have the Zoom option as well, depending on whether the governor re-signs an executive order or not to allow virtual meetings. Will depend on if we're going to actually be here in Chambers. But tentative date is the 27th. I know Budget Analyst DeMayo has been working on putting together a presentation for us for that first meeting. Certainly look forward to that. The next tentative dates are tentative right now. We're looking at February 10th and February 17th. We'll try to firm something up this week and get an email out to everybody and get it on the calendar. That being said, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, a Happy New Year, and please stay safe. Thank you. Moving on to council member communications, Council Vice President Ferry.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone else besides myself has noticed, but within the past 3 weeks, I've been into several stores in Cranston that are still using plastic bags. And in a couple of incidents, I took my council card, asked for the manager, and if I know the store, I twice said, you know, you're really not supposed to be using plastic bags anymore. And both incidences that I did get to speak to managers, I got the I didn't know answer, which basically I wasn't convinced of. And then within a couple of days, I went into 2 more stores and there were 2 more stores using plastic bags. So I said, if I saw 4 stores using plastic bags within a 2-week period, there's got to be 100 others. So we passed an ordinance. It's a good ordinance. I just think that we need to work somehow with the administration to figure out how in the world are we going to enforce this and let people know that they're breaking an ordinance. You know, one suggestion I had was that when people renew their licenses or apply for licenses, we should be sending them a notice, maybe on a bright neon piece of paper or something that says, or send them a copy of the ordinance. But it's obvious that they don't know in some cases, or they're just ignoring it in some cases. And I think that we need to come up with a solution as a council, as administration. How are we going to enforce this ordinance? Because why do we pass it if we're not going to figure out how to enforce it? So I'd like to have a discussion with the administration of some sort and figure out how we can do this. So that's basically where I'm coming from on this.
Thank you, Council Vice President Ferry. Councilmember Enzuli, do you have?
I completely 100% agree. I go into stores all the time and constantly ask if they knew and then, let them know what the ordinance is. A lot of times they say they ran out of the paper and they, went in the back, they had extra boxes of plastic. They're trying to use it. They know it's against the law, but obviously there's fines to be put out on these businesses. So once we start issuing fines, people will stop using the plastic and then our fines will also go up. So, kill two birds, one stone. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, my 2 cents on it certainly is an education issue, educating the public to let them know that there's ordinances in place. I think some know, some don't. Some might think it only applies to big box stores, might not apply to, a smaller convenience store. So I think if we can find some way to get it out there, whether it's run a billboard, put something in with a tax letter, I like the idea of you renew a license or maybe posting something on the city website might help as well. I think it's got to be more than a 1 or 2 prong approach. Councilmember Donegan?
Thank you, Council President. I remember when the ordinance first passed almost 3 years ago at this point, I might have been Councilwoman Vargas and perhaps Councilman Brady as well. We met with this Office of Sustainability in Providence to kind of talk about what they had done to roll out their ordinance. And I want to say they spent about $15,000 between marketing, which was both print, billboards, radio, as well as Mayor Alorza at the time going kind of door to door, doing a business walk, outreach about it. Right before the pandemic happened, I know that 2 individuals were here from the Eden Park neighborhood. I had met with a class at Eden Park to talk about, we were going to design a reusable bag to try and make available to the school population. I think that's something that perhaps we can think about doing, partnering with the libraries as well. But certainly, education and getting the information out is key to it. But also enforcing it when we see infractions, it does need to be enforced to the letter of what the ordinance calls for.
Through, I have to say through the chair, I am the chair. Director Moretti, I know recently and very recently, we've had some issues where I've gone into an establishment and they were using plastic and the administration was gracious enough to send Director Paulino out to educate the business owner. Is Director Paulino still doing that? If in the meantime, while we're trying to figure out a campaign to get the word out on this, is he available to any council members if we send an email to the administration? Will he
Sure.
still go out?
Sure. And if you see any infractions, if you will, let them know. He'll be happy, time permitting, it's, kind of a priority. We have not received complaints in the mayor's office. I asked, I haven't received one yet. However, the council's seeing this. So if you would like to just shoot an email to Director Paulino indicating the business, he'll go out, kindly explain the situation, and he'll follow up. I believe we follow up within 30 days to see if they've complied. So yes, he is able to still do it and is still doing that.
Yeah, and I believe the ordinance is written in a way that first offense, they get a warning letter or a warning, and then it goes up from there. So I think we're really, it's about education. It's not about going after businesses, but it's been a few years. It's time to try to get this rolling. Councilmember Enzuli?
Hi, thank you. Just a quick question. So who is actually in charge of enforcing this? Is it Director Paulino? Is it an inspector? Because in general, if a business is practicing without a victualling license and someone calls me as a safety services person, I know who to report that to. So someone will go out there. So if Vice President Ferry is going to a business and has gone there repeatedly and they're using plastic bags and I do the same thing, who do we actually report that to so that someone can go out and give a fine? who can issue the fines?
I guess I would ask one of the attorneys in back of us to take a look at the ordinance and see what it says for enforcement and who the enforcement authority is. I don't think that it indicates an enforcement authority, but if you guys can help me out on that. Short of that, that's why we're saying we're just whatever resources we could get, Director Paulino. But if I'm happy to be corrected.
Yeah, because I don't want to say it's Director Paulino if it's not him. If he doesn't have, the form to go out there and issue a fine, then this conversation is moot. We're getting nowhere because we don't know who can actually go out there and do it. And yes, we can educate until we're blue in the face, but it's been 3 years. People know. People go to other stores and they see paper bags or reusable bags. So you get a warning fine. Who's issuing the warning? And is that going into a spreadsheet somewhere or a database that we know they were warned? Or does the same, I've gone to particular places and told people 3 times now, so I know they know.
Councilwoman Renzulli, so that would be, it's a code enforcement issue. It's like any other ordinance that we have that deals with public health, safety, and things like that. So it would have to come from the code enforcement office, one of the inspectors, the same way they inspect, for other compliance with other things. So that's where it would come from.
So code enforcement office, that's where we should be reporting this.
Well, you can. I think you have a choice, though. Would you want to put the priority on plastic bags or on minimum housing? Frankly, we don't have the resources.
Okay, so is there and I'm sorry.
So just being very
to interrupt you.
practical, it's not funny really, but we are limited with resources. Perhaps there's a need for further inspectors. And that could be one of the, that could solve perhaps some of the problems.
So are you suggesting we need an inspector strictly for this or just a general inspector who could do more all around?
I'm not suggesting.
Okay, would that be helpful?
The more resources, the more enforcement in the city, in any department, the police department, inspections, yeah, sure.
Okay, so it's like a general inspector, because I know we put in,
Well, it just
for an
boils down to
inspector.
volume. The more complaints, the more issues, at a point, you need more people at a point. They're pretty busy right now. In many different areas, I can articulate them, but if you want that as a priority, certainly the administration would consider it if given the resources we have. Happy to consider that.
Director, I didn't mean to come across and say that the plastic bag inspection is more important than building code or rats or minimum housing. That's not at all what I was trying to say. I was just trying to understand if it's the same type of inspector, if we have general inspectors who go out to enforce everything. That's all I was trying to understand. So I apologize if I was not clear on that, because I do understand that there are bigger priorities.
And just to
There wouldn't be an electrical inspector. Maybe you do have a plastic bag inspector or a general inspector to do certain things. Maybe under minimum housing, perhaps.
I do have to say, just in general, I was chair of the Safety Services Committee for 4 years before Councilwoman Renzulli took the reins. Definitely in need of a code compliant. I know we're getting off the track here and we got to be careful because of open meetings, but we should look at a code compliance inspector that can check business licenses and also check on things like that. It's been one of the biggest complaints that I hear from an operational standpoint from working with the clerk's office, especially now in the position as council president and also as chair of safety services. So it might be a budget question, but I don't want to go off the rails here. We'll stick to plastic bags.
I would say administratively, that's the biggest challenge, probably the inspections department, the volume that they have, whether it be all the various inspectors and also in fire also in terms of alarm. So I would say, if you want to say what's our Achilles heel right now, I'd say it's inspections.
Okay, I think that Council President is a great idea, kind of melding it in with checking for licenses. It seems like it's like a business inspector. I don't know that that's a job and it's classified, unclassified, or what it is, but that's something that seems necessary. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to try to stick to plastic bags. Everyone's got their hands up now. Councilmember Jermaine, have you spoken on?
I just
plastic
have
bags?
one question. So while we are talking about the inspection, we know with the pandemic, there were a lot of inspection that's happening with COVID with requirements. So I would like to know who in the city that supervised the business while COVID, who did that?
Once again, it would, it was on a volunteer basis. Mr. Paulino would observe as best as he could. But I'm not aware of, there was at a point, Mr. DeBoni in the prior administration, to the extent that he could, serve inspectors, but there's no real power there. No, we don't have any COVID inspectors with the city.
Good to know.
Thank you. Council Member Vargas, I think you've had your hand up before. Councilmember Renzulli and Councilmember Donegan.
Yes, thank you. So, I mean, obviously the subject matter has come up a few times since this ordinance has passed. I'm wondering if there's any way that we're able to add, I'm not sure if that's where you were referenced, Council President, regarding when a business or a person comes to the clerk's office to file any type of paperwork, perhaps a sign, perhaps something on the actual letter, and even something on our website which says the plastic bag ordinance, because there's nothing on here right now under like licenses. When you go and click on various licenses, perhaps adding some language on there, and I could be wrong if it is on the website and I didn't see it. I think that might be some useful information to start off with. Second, when our economic development director is out in the community, or he's been in the community talking to businesses, I'm wondering if he's been gathering some sort of information, point of contact, that perhaps there is now a listing of email contacts that the administration perhaps now has, that we can actually send out and funnel through that information through that area. In addition to reaching out, obviously, I know we don't have a chamber. Not sure we can reach out to our Rhode Island Hospitality organization here, which I believe is still in Cranston, and perhaps see if there's anything that is we're able to do. And then when the tax letters go out next year as well, right? Perhaps maybe adding some language on there, and the messaging could add a little bit about the plastic and the recycling and everything else that we've kind of been doing. I think we had discussed putting a marketing tool and a marketing budget aside, or some sort of ways or strategic plan that we would be able to carry out the plastic ordinance. Yes, the pandemic hit, but with all this going on, while I don't want to be a burden on so many different businesses, at the same time, it's also an ordinance that we pass for so many reasons. So just curious if those could all be avenues that we can look at and have those conversations for the budget, which I thought we put some money aside for marketing, and I don't know if that was the reason for it, for plastic bags, but either way, I don't want to go off track, but I think that there's definitely ways that not only the administration, but even us as the council members can go on our own email contact, social media, and perhaps give a friendly reminder to all. But this has to be a collaboration amongst not only ourselves, but with the administrations, and hope that we're able to get the message across. And even with other chambers, and we can partner up with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, perhaps the Rhode Island Black Association, I think, of Business Owners REVA, I believe it is too, just in case, they have an extended amount of listings that they have of business owners that we may not be able to get to. So just a few ideas.
I think we just said is doable. What Councilman Ferry mentioned about license renewals, I think it's a fine idea. But you mentioned the tax bills, I think you mentioned, I think Councilman Ferry mentioned, sure. Those are easy. And in terms of the ordinary reach, I know that Director Paulino will go to the Rotary Club meetings, given their pertinence to Cranston. He could just chat it up, certainly in any of the forums. Yeah, those are all, and they're all pretty cheap too. And as the website, I remember Stephen had it up previously. I don't know if you can refresh. Okay, he'll put it on various licensing pages. He'll spruce that up to give it a higher profile.
Thank you for that. I know that, while I'm not sure what the traffic on our website is, but ideally it's still there. And the last point I do want to put is, every safety service committee meeting, I think at times, some of us have reminded those that are coming before us to renew licenses or come before us for any other matter. Might be a great opportunity for us to also stress it at those meetings before our safety services and remind those that are here coming before us about the plastic bag ordinance.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, something new implemented, it's going to evolve. I don't think it's going to be an overnight thing.
Thank you. Councilmember Donegan.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you, Councilwoman Renzulli, for letting me go next. To piggyback off of what Councilwoman Vargas just said, 3.12090 of the city code states that the tax assessor shall include a note to encourage recycling and waste reduction in tax bills mailed to residents and businesses. And I know we've discussed that before. That is a cheap and free way. The money's already being spent on the postage and the mailing to send out a flyer to to businesses about that. And perhaps that's even a free way that if we do decide to go some route to partner with the schools and get some sign for reusable bags, perhaps that's a way we could also engage and get people to weigh in on, a potential design for what that bag could be. But things to discuss.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on plastic bags? Councilmember Campopiano.
Or maybe we need to tackle it from a supply side of it. I don't know where the bags are supplied from, whether it's Restaurant Depot or Bizzuto's or one of the other major suppliers. Maybe they should be notified that there is an ordinance that there's no plastic bags and have them offer an alternative instead of, starting at the level of the markets or wherever using them.
Good suggestion. Thank you, sir. Councilmember Renzulli.
I'll be really fast. I just wanted to address what Councilwoman Jermaine had said about the COVID inspectors, because to my understanding, those came from business regulation and the Department of Health. I don't know, so I stand corrected, but that's where I believe all the COVID inspectors were from. But in that, we could reach out to the Department of Business Regulation and see what they do as far as, informing businesses when different regulations occur and how, so that they can enforce them. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? There being none, thank you, Council Vice President Ferry, for bringing this to our attention. Moving on to Councilwoman Jermaine. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. I would like to continue this communication because we know Dr. Paolo should be the chair of the commission and we know what happened. So I would like to continue this when it will be available to call.
Absolutely. Mr. Lima, can you put this in note this to continue this on the docket for next month?
It'll be noted for the record, Council President.
Thank you, sir. Okay, any other council member communications? There being none, there is no council business matters carried over. Introduction of new matters before the council. The matters under Roman numeral 12 are being referred to for a public hearing to the appropriate subcommittee of the council. They're listed here for referral and will be voted to the appropriate committee. I'll entertain a motion to send all of the new business to the appropriate committees.
Motion to send all business to its appropriate committees.
Second,
The motion a second. Any discussion on the new business? There being none, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Marino.
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli.
yes.
Councilmember Vargas. Councilmember Jermaine.
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan. Councilmember Campopiano.
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry.
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes,
Votes are 8 in the affirmative.
thank you. I see no further business before us. The city council's next regular monthly meeting will be held January 24th, 2022. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Any discussion? There being none. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll on adjourn.
Councilmember Marino.
Yes.
Councilmember Renzulli.
yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine.
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan. Councilmember Campopiano.
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry.
Yes.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yes,
Votes are 8 in the affirmative, none in the negative.
thank you. We are adjourned. Happy holidays, everyone.